Module 2, Summarizing Data in Tables and Graphs. Section 2.1, Organizing Qualitative Data. We will look at these three objectives in this section. When data is collected from a survey or designed experiment, they must be organized into a manageable form. Data that is not organized is referred to as raw data. There are three ways to organize data: tables, graphs, and numerical summaries, which we'll examine further in Chapter 3. Objective 1, we want to organize qualitative data in tables. A frequency distribution lists each category of data and the number of occurrences for each category of data. So in this example, we want to look at the data at the bottom, which represent the color of M&Ms in a bag of plain M&Ms. And we'll construct a frequency distribution of the color of the plain M&Ms. So I've listed the data here again, and what we'll do first is go through our list and make a tally mark in our category for that color if there was one. So right now I see that I have 2 brown, so I'll put 2 tally marks in the brown column and 1 yellow, and we'll continue so on. So you'll notice that I have crossed out each data entry as I counted it in my tally, and now we'll add up the tally marks to get our frequency for that color of M&M. For brown we had 12, yellow there was 10, red we had 9, orange we have 6, blue we have 3, and green we have 5. And now we've created a frequency table for our different colors of M&Ms in our bag. The relative frequency is the proportion or percent of observations within a category and is found using this formula. The relative frequency equals the frequency divided by the sum of all of the frequencies. A relative frequency distribution lists each category of data with the relative frequency. So now let's use the frequency distribution obtained in the prior example to construct a relative frequency distribution of our color of plain M&Ms. So the first step is to find the sum of all of our frequencies. When we add them all up, we'll see that we had 45 total M&Ms, so that's our total. To find the relative frequency, we take each individual frequency and divide it by the total. And we'll round our values to 4 decimal places. So here we have now obtained the relative frequencies of our M&Ms. If we wanted to get them in a percent format, we would simply multiply our decimal values by 100%. Objective 2, we want to construct bar graphs. A bar graph is constructed by labeling each category of data on either the horizontal or vertical axis, and the frequency or relative frequency of the category on the other axis. Rectangles of equal width are drawn for each category. The height of each rectangle represents the category's frequency or relative frequency. So for our example, using the M&M data from our previous example, we want to construct first a frequency bar graph and then a relative frequency bar graph. So you'll see that we have our frequency table here of our M&Ms, and we want to look at constructing a frequency bar graph. Notice that we have listed the different colors of M&Ms on the horizontal axis. These are our categories. And the frequency will be on the vertical axis. The heights of the bars will represent the frequency of that category. So notice that brown had 12 M&Ms in that category. So our bar goes up to height 12. Yellow had 10, red had 9, orange had 6, blue had 3, and green had 5. So here we have our frequency bar graph. Now let's look at constructing a relative frequency bar graph. It's going to look very similar, except instead of using the frequencies, we will use the relative frequencies, or our decimal values. So the relative frequencies will be on our vertical axis, the categories are still on the horizontal. And the heights of the bars are now going to be representing our decimal relative frequency values. Remember, brown was 0.2667. Yellow was 0.2222, and red was 0.2 exactly. Orange was 0.1333. Blue was 0.0667, and then green was 0.1111. Notice that the two graphs, the frequency and relative frequency, look remarkably similar. A Pareto chart is another type of bar graph, where the bars are drawn in decreasing order of frequency or relative frequency. So when listing our categories, we list the category with the highest frequency first, and then list them in decreasing order from there. This is an example of our M&Ms in decreasing order. In this example, we want to compare two data sets. The following data represent the marital status in millions of U.S. residents 18 years of age or older in 1990 and in 2006. So to compare these two data sets, we will draw a side-by-side relative frequency bar graph of the data. Here we have our four categories: never married, married, widowed, and divorced. In 1990, bars are in the lighter blue, and 2006 are in the darker blue. And I've listed the relative frequencies. So notice the total, or the sum of our frequencies for 1990 was 181.9, and then the total for 2006 was 219.7. Those are listed at the top, but they're a little difficult to see. And the relative frequencies are listed below each number. So those are the numbers that have been used to draw the heights of our bars. It does us better to compare the relative frequencies. If you look at our married column, if we look at our original frequencies, it looks like there are fewer people married in 1990 than are married in 2006. However, proportionally to the number of people in the study, it's a higher percentage or higher relative frequency are married in 1990 than in 2006. Objective 3, we want to construct pie charts. A pie chart is a circle divided into sectors. Each sector represents a category of data. The area of each sector is proportional to the frequency of the category. So in this example, we have data that represent our marital status of our U.S. residents from 2006, and we want to draw a pie chart of this data. So the first thing we need to do is take the frequency chart and convert it to degrees and percent. So remember that to convert to degrees, we take the frequency and divide it by the total, and then we will multiply that number by 360 degrees. For the percent, we take the frequency divided by the total, which is the relative frequency, and multiply it by 100%. So remember that our total for 2006 was 219.7. So we take each frequency and divide that by the 219.7, and then multiply that value by 360 degrees. And we get approximately 90 degrees for those in our never married column. We do the same for the percent, this time multiplying by 100%, and we get approximately 25%. So we'll continue this for the rest of our categories. So here are the values that we found for our percents. And now let's look at our pie chart. We want to put those into the circle. And it gives us a nice visual of being able to see that the majority of the marital status in 2006 were married.